we can say it because we have poverty here, but the extent to just name it poverty. I am going to go a little bit back, although I see Dr. Duke wants to come in, because I want you to share.
Because I think it's important that Attorney Juanita help us understand what brought her to the world of even recognizing that human sex trafficking is there. And that's what this question is. So I don't want us jumping the gun before we help understand what brought Attorney Juanita to this moment of revelation that brought her to 9 years of work doing this.
And let me just state here, Attorney Juanita, from a personal point of view, you will be, are you going to be able to speak on child abuse?
Most certainly. That's something I've been doing for the last 6 years. So I will do that. But I just want to wrap up this point so that we don't lose the focus, because I want to be clear here. When I say that we need to move away from poverty, the point is in the UK, we have a system that provides for us benefits, housing, etc. Because what it is, people believe that poverty is the driving force behind trafficking. And so if you are not impoverished, you can't be trafficked. That is my point. There are people who are middle class who are being trafficked. It is not just about poverty. I want to just explain this. Other vulnerabilities could be, for example, disability, LGBTQ, runaway, not speaking the language, refugee, asylum. Being female could be a vulnerability. Being in a certain community, ethnic origin, race, caste. We need to move away from poverty because there are a lot of victims who are not impoverished, who are trafficking victims. So I really want to make that very clear, because in the US, we have trafficking victims who may come from privilege, but their vulnerability is loneliness. Their vulnerability is a need for love and affection from mommy and daddy, who are too busy working in law firms or working very hard to keep up that expensive lifestyle, that that young girl, woman, or boy is drawn into a relationship that ends up turning south. But what led me into this industry? My own personal story. I survived childhood sexual abuse from the ages of 4 to 10 by my mother's first husband. It began with tickling. My stepfather's hand slipped. I confided in my mother immediately. My mother had told me nobody should touch your private parts. She did not call it cookie, pumpkin, or any of that nonsense. She called it private parts. I told her. By her own admission, she told me off, and she told my stepfather off. She told me, don't let it happen again. Therefore, in my mind, as a 4-year-old, when she told me, don't let it happen again, when it happened again, I did not tell her. However, I will say this abuse progressed on from mere tickling and touching over my clothing to attempted rape in my sleep. And as a result of that, I still suffer with some of the trauma in my adulthood, one of which is severe insomnia. And what I want to say, and this is an important thing, I have met victims and survivors with insomnia who were sexually abused in their childhood. When somebody has insomnia, do not tell them to drink chamomile tea, Horlicks, take sleeping pills, soursop leaves. Do not do that. That is a quick fix. That is a band-aid. That is a plaster. Instead of trying to quick fix the insomnia, why don't you ask them questions about the insomnia? How long have you had it for? What is causing it? And I say this in humility, but I need to say it. I believe in humility, I'm an intelligent human being. Therefore, when people tell me to use earplugs, that is not helpful. That is patronizing. I've been using earplugs for decades. It doesn't work. I am hypersensitive to noise, the fan, the fridge, air conditioning, a ticking clock, coughing, dogs barking, cocks crowing. I am hypersensitive to noise. And also we've got to consider the trauma. I was abused in my sleep. Therefore, I have issues with my sleep. So what I'm saying is when you meet a person who struggles with anything, do not quick fix it. Ask questions to understand the root cause of that issue. When a person is obese, do not tell them to stop eating. Do not tell them to be vegan or go on keto diet. Do not do that. ask them, how long have you had this issue with your weight? What started it? Where did it stem from? Let's stop quick fixing and patronizing people. Let's dig beneath the surface. The Bible talks about trees and branches. The Bible talks about fruit. To know a tree, get to the root cause. I'm begging you, please. It is so patronizing when people tell me, use earplugs. I'm not an idiot. I use earplugs. They don't work. Even when you watch movies and a person is shooting a gun inside a contained environment, they use air deafeners. They use air deafeners in addition to the earplugs.
They don't want to hear.
Yes.
Yes, they don't want to hear. They don't want to hear their acts. They don't want to be a part of feeling any remorse for anybody. So they deafen themselves.
Yes.
Tell us how,
and I just,
if you were attacked in your sleep, how are you sure who did it?
Before I answer, I saw somebody said they would like to connect with me. All you need to do is Google my first and last name, Juanita Headley, or Google changing cases on Facebook or on the internet, changing, C-A-S-E-S, changing cases. You can find me that way. Google my name, Juanita Headley, H-E-A-D-L-E-Y. Just Google me. You can find my information on the internet. What I would say, when I was sexually abused in my sleep, I'm an only child living with my mother and stepfather. My stepfather was the only other human being in the house. He was an alcoholic. He had bad personal hygiene. I would recognize his smell. And I want to point out that my stepfather never threatened me. My stepfather never spoke to me. He abused me in my sleep. It was attempted rape. Now, let me explain for those who are ignorant. Ignorant is a lack of knowledge. The Bible says people perish for lack of knowledge. When I say ignorant, I'm saying they're ignorant in relation to attempted rape. Attempted rape means he tried, but I fought him off. He tried, but then someone came to him. He tried, but there was a but there. Because I spoke recently in a church in Trinidad, and the church congregation said, Miss Headley is not right in the head. Trust me, my faculties are all there. Attempted rape means he tried and did not succeed. It's not in my head. I didn't just lie there and allow him to rape me at 4. I fought back. I tossed and turned. Come on, guys. It's not rocket science. We toss and turn in our sleep. That is what I did. The police did not believe me. That is the truth of what happened. I didn't just lie there prostrate and allow him to rape me. I tossed and turned. My mother was on the telephone at the time. That's how I know it wasn't her. It was a male, but it was not her. She was on the phone. The person who would ring her, let's call her Mrs. X, would talk for hours. So my stepfather knew my mother would be occupied. He would come upstairs, abuse me in my sleep, go into the restroom, flush the toilet, and come downstairs. My mother had no idea. She did not know, because pedophiles are very smart. They are very clever. My stepfather never threatened me whatsoever. He did not speak to me whatsoever. My stepfather groomed me. My mother was very strict. She would beat me as a child. My stepfather gave me candy, special privileges. He would let me stay up late. My stepfather groomed me. Grooming is preparation. Preparation for school, preparation for work, preparation for sex. In the daytime, he would buy me candy, alcohol pops, alcohol with juice inside. So he would give me special privileges. He taught me to cook, taught me to ride a bike, and he listened to my problems. When a woman or a girl dating a man 10 or 20 years older, she says to you, I'm with this guy, and you ask her why, what does she normally say? Because he listens to me, guys. When you don't listen to your children, the pedophile will. My stepfather was my best friend. He groomed me. It's called Stockholm Syndrome, trauma bonding. It doesn't mean I wasn't right in the head. He groomed me. It's a form of brainwashing. He was my best friend. And so because of that relationship, it was very confused. It was confused. He is a pedophile in my sleep, but he's my best friend in the daytime. That makes you a confused individual who suppresses those emotions. Nobody knew he was abusing me because we were so close. He was my best friend, and on his deathbed, when he was in the coffin, when he had died, I went to his funeral. He has a biological daughter. Yep, he does. He has a daughter a year older than me and a grandson. I cried more than anybody in that church. I touched the body. I went up and said on stage, I loved him. I did not know I loved him. He's a pedophile. But I will tell you, out of the wellsprings of the heart, the mouth speaks. It says it in the Bible. When you are emotional, the truth comes out. I did not know I loved my stepbrother till I stood on that pulpit and I cried hysterically more than anybody in that church. His daughter was dry-eyed. Can you imagine? His birth daughter didn't cry and I cried, and I touched the body and said I loved him. I was groomed. Even up to today, I call him my stepfather. My mother is remarried. That is my mother's husband. He is not my stepfather. We are not close. We don't have a close relationship. I call him my mother's husband. He is not my stepfather. And that is sad, and that is sick and twisted, that my stepfather is a pedophile, not my mother's husband, who has never abused me. That is a sad reality.
Wow.
Hey, it's me. I wanted to share, I think this is powerful, and this is why I really wanted us to get to this point of the conversation. I'm duty bound to come in as a physician as well, because what Attorney Juanita is sharing is actually a very common experience. And most people, this is why many people dismiss the testimony of particularly young people who are abused, because we do assume that a young person who's abused, particularly sexually abused, whether male, female, or however they identify with gender, the assumption is, well, if you're describing something so horrible, it must have left you hating the person. And oftentimes that's not what happens, because that is the nature of grooming, right? Grooming literally first requires the person to ingratiate themselves with you, and oftentimes ingratiate themselves with your family. This is why we talk about it on this show a lot, about knowing who you bring into your home, know who you get into bed with, know why they're coming into your home, because not only would a groomer be sexually grooming your children, preparing for sex with them, but they're actually going to be amazing to you as well in the beginning, because they're incredibly attentive to the parents in the household, to the family member, the grandparents. It's usually the best person you've ever met. Now, that said, there are people who are amazingly great. They come into a relationship, they become co-parents, blended family, and they take care of a family without doing that. But we have to beware, right? And the groomer can be a sexual partner. It could also be that person bringing their own child. Again, we're talking about blended families. You know, I know there's a big push, especially in religious conversation, and when we talk about in the Caribbean and especially Black diaspora communities around the world, but also you just take Christianity especially, and there's a big push for women having partners, and no conversation about actually how do we help the partnership. And so we do have questions coming up now to ask about the role of church and clergy when you're doing these counseling for family unification and family bonding and blending. So I won't go more there. But I actually wanted to come in to really applaud Attorney Juanita, to make sure the audience is really getting this, because grooming is multifactorial, multi-layered. Grooming takes time, but it's because it's really psychologically amazing what they do, because with such grooming, they actually groom the adults around to also not believe the child when the child finally shares, right? And I want to again emphasize what Attorney Juanita just shared, which is she was told, don't let it happen again, which really, that's a very Caribbean thing for us to do. We tell children all the time, don't let it happen again, which is really the adults not wanting to handle the situation.
They don't want to hear
going forward, right? That is called dismissive behavior, and we do it a lot. Like we would discipline a child and say, don't let me see it do it again. But the truth is, because you really weren't comfortable handling the situation as an adult, and you prefer not to handle it again, so you now put the burden on the child. And so it's important that we hear what she's saying and we actually apply to what we know to be true in our everyday life, right? We know our sons have raped, but what do we tell him? Don't do it again. And we go out there and we tell them, well, he's not doing it again. He stopped doing that. Because again, we're actually protecting ourselves mentally as opposed to addressing the problem. So thank you so much. I wanted to just come in to highlight that, and I'm off. Thank you. I'm done.
So Juanita, you still have the floor. You might find me sounding very subdued, because I recognize that the church not doing what they're supposed to do. They're not behaving like if they are ready to heal people. Not because you don't understand or you don't believe. They're going to assassinate your character and your feelings. They're going to make you feel like if you are crazy. What is going on? What ministry are they supporting? You have to minister to people. You're not ministering against what you said. So continue. Let us hear of that church, and the floor is yours still.
Most certainly. What I will say is that we have to realize and appreciate that this is an issue. I mean, even in the Bible, we had the story of Tamar, I believe, who was raped by her brother. We have the issue. That's right. We have David and Bathsheba. There was adultery there and murder. So we have to realize these are not new things. We have to appreciate this has been going on from Bible days. In fact, the first human trafficking story, labor trafficking, was Joseph in the Bible. Labor trafficked by his brothers. We as believers have a responsibility, and too often I feel that we resort to spiritualizing things and running to prayer, when in fact prayer requires action also. If a person is hungry, you do not just pray for a hungry person, you would give them bread. And so we have to appreciate this is an important issue and topic that needs to be discussed. It's not about sweeping things under the carpet. That does not work. The fact of the matter is that there is a problem of abuse, there is a problem of incest, rape, domestic violence that goes on. And unfortunately, I feel that churches do not necessarily want to be involved in this. In fact, I have an experience in Trinidad where I was meant to speak at a church, and they said, we have changed our mind about you speaking on the topic because we are not ready. And they canceled on me. I don't know how they're not ready. This one I don't understand. How are you not ready? And let me just divert slightly here, because when a person has been a victim of abuse in their young years, it affects the development of their brain. They have had an ACE, an adverse childhood experience, and this will affect them. But with help, with healing, prayer, and counseling, that child can be restored. But I want to give a point here. When we hear about domestic violence, a man beating a woman, for example, what we often in the church would say, divorce her or pray about it. Now, let me say something and hear this carefully. I don't believe either of those responses are correct, and I'll explain why. Hear this carefully. When a man beats his wife and you make him divorce, he will most likely go and do that again to the next wife.
Transfer, yay.
When you tell them to pray, prayer is important, but prayer requires action too. Think about it like this. I have met victims and survivors who are female, who were sexually abused in their childhood, who have severe anger issues. I have severe anger issues. I have two emotions, happiness or anger. Happiness or anger. I am always angry, 365 days of the year. I'm angry in text, I'm angry in email, I'm angry in WhatsApp, always. Why? I can't tell you why.
Are you angry here?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. No, I'm not. Let me explain something though. I do have the fruit of the Spirit, but not every fruit. My anger is intertwined with a lack of patience. And so because of the way you're engaging with me, I do not have anger in this platform. But if you were to ask me certain questions or talk to me in a way that will trigger me, in a way that is disrespectful, the anger would rear its head, because there are people who talk down to me, who talk to me like I'm a child, that raises the anger. The anger raises its head because when I was abused, I was disrespected. When I was abused, so that is a trigger. What I'm trying to say here, if I can have anger issues as a result of abuse, if I can meet women and girls with anger issues as a result of abuse, who's not to say sometimes, that's an important word, sometimes when we have men beating their wives, it is as a result of the anger issues as a result of the child's sexual abuse. So therefore, when you tell him to pray about it or divorce, you have not dealt with the roots of the anger, which was childhood sexual abuse. And that is what I really want to say. We've got to deal with the root cause and stop sweeping things under the carpet, because some men I have met have been abused sexually. They do not beat their partner or wives to my knowledge, but there are men who have been abused sexually and do beat their wives because of the anger issues. I had to say that. That is important.
Oh boy.
I agree, and I'm back because that's very true. I guess I'm part of the show today. So
yes, today, thank you.
One of the things that happens also when we see men abusing their partners, their spouse, or we'll hear about the fact that he's having sexual dysfunction, right? Because there's also, you know, you can look at it from multiple ways. You have some men who were actually sexually abused by women, whether it be their mom, their aunt, a teacher, etc. But now their relationship to that interaction is so different that even when they have their partner, it can't be the same. They can't equate it because there's also a lot of trauma inside that's associated with pleasure. There's trauma associated with sexual satisfaction and orgasm, right? And so imagine usually an orgasm is supposed to be a pleasurable feeling, but at the same time, you're flooded with memories during that orgasm of what happened before. Because here's the thing, for so long, people have assumed that orgasm equals sexual satisfaction and sexual contentment. Yet,
tell them, doc.
A physiologic response. And so imagine being abused as a child, whether you're born with a penis, you're born with a vagina, a clitoris, and now that's your connection. Your connection whenever you have an orgasm is remembering that it happened when you didn't want it to happen. So it's hard to tease that apart. And until people actually engage in meaningful therapy, meaningful conversations that allow people to really express this and talk about it and not just pray about it, not just have someone say, let's remove the demon from within you, which is a lot of what we talk about, right? Well, instead of saying, oh my God, this person was abused, let's help them heal, we say they're now occupied by a demon. We use words like incubus and succubus, and we change it from what really happened, which is they were abused. They should be allowed an opportunity, even if possible, to confront their abuser. Sometimes that's part of healing, but you know, it has to be done safely, right? But the first step is just the exploring of the conversation. A lot of this also stems from a colonial history where it was okay to abuse. I mean, I say okay, I don't mean it was actually okay. I mean, people thought it was okay to abuse children. And of course, parents had no real right. You had to just watch. If the colonial masters decided that your child was too pretty for that, they abused them. So you actually see that, right? You see how people immediately start judging a young, good-looking child, and they're going to say to the parents, oh, yeah, this one's going to be a heartbreaker. Oh, get ready, prepare yourself for this one.
Yes.
It's all stuff that we have to break up in the Caribbean, now in the world, because most of the world, unfortunately, has been colonized in one way or the other, right? Even if we look at cultures like Japan and South Korea, and you look at what happened with what Japan did when it actually colonized and occupied the Koreas and occupied parts of China. So this isn't just a European, other parts of the world issue. This is multi-layered. But the first step is we have to talk about it like we are here. I love that Attorney Juanita is willing to share her experience and empower and enlighten people with it. We have to understand what grooming is, and also understand that just because someone had an orgasm when they were being abused, or raped, does not, or rape, doesn't mean, oh, they were liking it, so why are you talking about it? No. You were there, you were well understanding and enjoying it. Why are you here talking about it? That is not true. For those who may remember, here in the United States about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, we had the big thing that happened in Congress when that Republican congressman tried to justify rape as being a good thing if a baby came out of it or if the person enjoyed it, saying that there's actually a certain qualification for rape. Because again, we've long decided that rape is only something painful, something horrific, when the majority of abuse is not painful, it's not horrific. And my last example is if you go back to when Oprah first shared her own personal trauma as a child, and Oprah shocked the world when she said, you know, people don't know, but you're enjoying it in the moment. It feels good. It doesn't mean it was good for you, but it feels good. The same goes for men who were abused maybe by other men. So imagine now you're not sure what sex is supposed to feel like. You're not sure what healthy sexual experiences are. And again, you're in a relationship now and you're trying to fit what society says this is supposed to be. We're trying to fit what the church says about homosexuality, etc. And so you end up being left again broken. And this is also why many abusers go on to become abusers themselves, because they've never been allowed to talk about it. So they're left to just perpetuate it in silence and in secret. So thank you so much.
So Avi, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to speak. Yes. I think you have some small personal part in this conversation. I'm going to give you 5 minutes.
Yes. As someone who has also been through some level of abuse, both in childhood and adulthood, I can attest to even those triggers. Juanita, I'm similar to you. I can be the angriest Black woman there is. When people would meet me and don't necessarily know me, I don't let anyone into my circle. I'm a very closed person. And for the type of job that I do, it's not necessarily a great thing. But I'm a giving person. I'm a loving person. If you get to know the underneath, those are the qualities within me. But, you know, I can see how you get triggered within your own relationships. Sex becomes a problem. You go through them. It's like you go through the motion. You're there, you're in a relationship with a person, and you just go through the motions. You lay there and you try not to feel, which in itself, it's abuse in its own way, because it's like you're just continuing that level of abuse. You're sitting there and you don't know how to stand up and say, you know what? I just don't know how to feel. I don't know how to be happy in that moment. And, you know, it took a lot for me to even, like, I'm married now and things have been a lot different with my husband. It took a lot for me to even get there. Like, I remember pushing a lot of people away. I couldn't, my relationship after my adulthood abuse, I just couldn't give him that me that he deserved. And, you know, I almost lost my life. And this is something I haven't really shared too much, because there is still that stigma attached with sharing. You know, you go and you try to talk to your family, or you try to talk to your friends, or you try to talk to, you know, the people who should be close in your life. And the first thing they're quick to tell you is, oh, what did you do? Why is it a me do something? I didn't do anything. You know, we quick to victim blame. We quick to, you know, put that shame on the individual, when, to be honest, I did everything that I was supposed to do as a woman. I cooked, I cleaned, I took care of the kids, I went and paid the bills, but yet that was who that person was. It wasn't a me issue, it was a he issue. You know, and a lot of us have to, as a parent myself, I've developed that overprotectiveness with my children. My children don't go anywhere. Either they're here or with the one other person that I trust in my life, my sister. And as parents, we have to get to a place where we are able to listen. We have to be able to speak about things. You know, growing up in the Caribbean, I wasn't raised in a home where we could have those kind of conversations and talk about sex. You know, sexuality is life. And we should be able to openly have those conversations with our daughters, openly have those conversations with our sons, and let them know that, you know what, if you're in a situation, it's okay to leave. It is okay to walk out. You know, you don't have to stay in it and be happy just for sake of face. To please whom? Who are you pleasing when you stay? Exactly. Like, you know, there's so much stigma that comes with it. Oh, you're a separated woman. You're a divorced woman. I was in the church at that time with my daughter's father. He wouldn't come to church because he wanted to come to church. He came to church because he wanted to follow me. It was his way of control. And until we gain that control back, we will not get over it. And I'm a person, you know what my trigger is? My trigger is feeling like someone is controlling me. I will flip off at a person when I feel like you're getting to a place where you want to take my control. Let me think for myself. Let me do for myself. Don't try to take that from me. And that's one of my biggest triggers that I'm trying to work on. Don't let me get to a place where I start feeling like I'm being controlled.
Dr. Duke want to say something.
Yes.
I'm here to applaud because what she just shared is powerful and it's true. And it's something that many of us haven't had an opportunity to work through with ourselves. So we see so many expressions of anger across our communities and nobody realizing it's really, many of them, they're also cries for help from long-standing hurt and trauma. And it's why I've said it on this program before when I've come on, which is we do need to engage in what we should call public decolonization and anti-trauma conversations. Because so many of us are hurting, and we're hurting from generational trauma, whether it be generational oppression, generational sexual trauma, generational economic trauma, generational misogyny, generational chauvinism. There are just so many levels of generational trauma. You know, it's one of the things, you know, I know people laugh all the time and they joke, right? And they start with questions like, why do, for example, West Indian and African women always sound so angry, so loud? But part of it also comes from a history of not being heard, right? So you feel like you have to shout at people to get heard in a room. You know, so sure, we're screaming many times because that's the only way we know how. It's the only, in the end, it turned out to be the only way people hear us. And it's not until you finally are able to end up in spaces where you're able to work on your own trauma, work on your own expression, and also learn what is your power and how to express your power with confidence that you may actually learn to take it down a few notches tone-wise. But in the meantime, once you learn it, when you go back to the communities where nobody hears you unless you're screaming, suddenly then they say, well, what is going on here? What is this about them? And so we also have to change that so that we can recognize when people have also gotten to that level where they have helped their own hurt. So I think given the time constraints, though, we should jump into conversations here about therapy, the role of therapy. What are signs of sex trafficking in particular, and what can we, the community, do to address sex trafficking? Attorney Juanita. And I actually brought up a question here, but you guys sort of jumped into it. But let's have Attorney Juanita give her closing statements on this particular question, which is what is the role of the religious organizations and the clergy in assessing and addressing sexual abuse and trafficking amongst the congregation or in the community? So many places of worship, and I'm saying places of worship, not just Christianity, because we actually have multiple places of worship that participate in this, even the missionary work. But sometimes in the act of doing missionary work, some places do it well, but other places they're really just bringing more people in so that their own internal abusers can have new victims. So we have to talk about it from so many levels. But what is your take on this, Attorney Juanita?
So Attorney Juanita, before you answer, I want to get the public to understand that you have already scheduled or schedule according to where you live for another show on Mama Coco. You are going to be back. Right?
Definitely. 110%. Absolutely.
Yes. And then we want to thank Avi for her contribution here. She has much more to say, but we will do it another day because she's co-host and you are the guest. So take it away.
What I would say is that in the Bible, Matthew 18, I believe it is, Matthew 18, 15 to 17, it says, when you have a problem with your brother, go to them directly. When they don't listen, bring another person. When they still don't listen, bring the pastor. I believe that there is a protocol and there is a way of doing things. Even when you're at work, there is a protocol. You go first to your coworker, then to the supervisor, then to management or HR. What I would say, though, and I believe that this is appropriate when we consider the Bible says to abide by the laws of the land, give to Caesar's what is Caesar's. We need to consider when an allegation has come out of a sexual nature, an allegation of abuse, rape, etc., involving a member of the church community, whether the person is in leadership or not, I feel that it is important to note that we cannot apply that scripture, because what happens when we apply that Matthew 18 scripture, what happens? What do you think happens? Well, we know the answer, and I'm sure you may have seen about it or read about it. What often happens is that individual will, of course, deny it, and that individual can now hide the evidence of whatever it is that they were doing. By you putting them in the know, they're able to create their own alibi. But instead, I believe that when we have heard of an allegation, we need to inform the authorities immediately. Even if that child is not telling the truth, that young person is lying, let the police investigate. 10, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have the DNA evidence like we do now. We didn't even know how to use DNA properly. Now we do. And we have to appreciate that when a person perpetrates this crime, it is highly possible that they do indeed have evidence. Because now when we think about websites like OnlyFans, a person can abuse, rape, etc. to another individual, take photos and videos and sell it on OnlyFans and make money from those photos and videos. So therefore, it's not just that the abuse is taking place, it's now that that perpetrator can monetize on it. And I appreciate what was shared just now about the fact that it is not just the Christian faith, but all faiths. And I think we need to appreciate that it is not a Catholic problem. It is not a Catholic problem. I'm so sick of hearing about the Catholic Church. Just like I made reference earlier, it is not just poverty. It is not just movement. We have to appreciate there are exceptions to the so-called rule. There are people of all faiths who are abusing, people of all ethnic origin, all gender abusing. So let's leave the Catholic Church alone. Even in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we had a case recently of a man who was a victim of sodomy by a spiritual Baptist pastor. Spiritual Baptist, not Catholic.
Well, you know, most spiritual Baptists belong to either Anglican or Catholic, so let's not even think about it. So we have this to talk about, but we're going to leave it for another time, because what may seem as abuse in one culture is the norm in another culture. Are you guys in agreement?
Yes.
Dr. Attorney?
I am not in agreement. So I want to clarify that language, Coco, because that's not justification, right? There are actually certain things that abuse is abuse. Just because it's culturally normal doesn't stop it from being abuse.
No, well, you know what? I'm glad you came.
But I want to clarify, because I don't want the audience taking this, because even in Trinidad and Tobago, this was the whole crux when the Child Marriage Act was being debated and being fought over, which is we had certain religious groups saying it's okay for us to do child marriage because that is our culture. Okay. And so that's why I came in to clarify, because that is not what we're saying here on Live with Mama Coco. And it's certainly not something for someone to clip and run with, because that is not what is being said here, right? What is being said here is there may be different cultural approaches, but when we actually look at the foundation of certain things, they're not right, okay? No 12-year-old is ready for marriage. No 12-year-old is ready for parenting, but it happens because of abuse. So, Coco, that's what, it's not a personal anything. This is just a
it is kind of personal, because I'm trying to let you know. I'm trying to let you know something, that what I said is not what I wanted to. I understand you said that it can be misconstrued. I know.
Yes.
Don't think I wasn't going to clarify what I started to say. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Being accepted doesn't make it right.
So that's why I came up.
You didn't have to.
No, I'm here. Let's keep talking, Coco. The audience is here too. Let's go.
What I am saying here, and I've said before, what I was trying to express is that it may seem normal, but it's not right. Not because it's acceptable, it is right. So you didn't allow me to go where I was going. Thank you for coming in. I accept what you say, because
yes, I answered because you asked a question.
Even what is happening to me right now, where this young lady she's trying. But because of this show, and because of my daughter, and her ability to be a psychologist and a psychiatrist, I don't have to worry. She cannot touch me or move me, because that's a form of abuse that she's doing right now. So I wish my daughter can say something, and I'm proud of you being my daughter, and I understand you, and we are doing well. We are waiting for you.
Oh, so you're referring to the troll.
Yes.
I honestly think the troll is hilarious. And for me, the hilarity is that people actually find that helpful to them, that they're posting and giving. You know, you've heard me talk to you about this, so I'm not going to give that person breath by actually talking about them. What I would say, cyberbullying is real. I think what we see across the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago included, is whenever people feel like power is slipping away from them, and that could be an abuser, that could be a politician, that could be financial power, anything.
A husband,
anybody who feels like the power hold they had on vulnerable populations is slipping away from them, they will go to any length, as Attorney Juanita just said, to hide evidence, to suppress free speech, to claim that they themselves are being victimized, right? And so I feel like that's just another symptom. This particular troll's behavior is another symptom of that larger problem. And instead, for me, when I saw that, I just, I laughed. I also told you, don't take this seriously. This really isn't that important. And I also shared that it's more a symptom of the people who led such a person to think that this was the path forward, right? It also amazingly showed the impact you and your presence has. And so it was very interesting just a day later to receive the email from Facebook saying you're now eligible for this program, blah, 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 blah. Because it was clear that not only, it means that when they sat in their important offices and their important congregations, they recognized the impact of the reach of Mama Coco. And so there was a call to action likely given, which was, how do we debunk this person? How do we start sowing seeds of doubt? I think, like I told her, there'll be more. Like I explained to Coco, there will be more.
Like what the churches try to do to Juanita.
Yes,
they try to make people stop believing in her
by
saying you're crazy.
Not well. They're going to discredit by saying, well, she was part of it. Don't listen. No, it's just because, But the truth is, it's because she was actually speaking to true human emotion. So there's one particular person I saw who is part of the anti-cocoa crowd right now, but I know it's because they themselves have their own secrets and their own abuses that they've done to vulnerable populations. And so the fear is, if you are still given your platform and allowed to keep speaking, you're going to empower and embolden even their own victims, okay? And so, of course, the abuser is now going to join against the information coming out because they themselves will fall under the microscope, right? If we talk about Trinidad and Tobago and some of the issues that we need to be aware of, and, you know, people probably don't know, but, you know, there are lots of organizations around the world that keep track of all sorts of things, including sex trafficking in our country, sex trafficking in other countries. Hold on, I need to unshare something here. But I think it's really important that we talk about some of these things because, you know, to me, it's hilarious. And I explained to Coco, so clearly she wanted me to talk about it because otherwise I was just going to leave it be because it is hilarious. And to me, if you're drowning, you grasp at any straw. And to me, it's the sign of a drowning happening. And I hope people would actually help the one being drowned. I am not in favor of the tit for tat fight back, but I recognize that if somebody feels attacked, that is one way we respond, particularly in the Caribbean, because again, for a long time, especially amongst women, we've been disempowered and disenfranchised. So the only fight we know how to fight is to fight other women. We don't really know how to fight the politicians who are disempowering and disenfranchising us. We don't know how to speak up for our communities because we were taught to be selfish in how we view community. We were taught to be selfish in, imagine, you know, if a kid comes forward, and a kid is anybody under 18 in my opinion, even an 18-year-old still needs some, you know, adulting lessons, but someone under 18 comes forward and says they've been abused, they've been harmed, and what do we say? You know, other times we tell them they're too young to have opinions, but all of a sudden, when it comes to sexual abuse, physical abuse, they're making it up, right? All of a sudden, they're very savvy enough to make up sex. They're savvy enough to concoct a story of rape. But anything else, you were telling them they're too young to understand. But now suddenly you believe they're the savviest person who made up a lie about sexual trauma, sexual abuse, sexual advances, right? And that's where we need to heal ourselves and start getting honest about how we have perpetuated the culture that leads to a chief justice being accused of certain things. And instead of saying, well, let's figure out why this kind of story is even attached to a chief justice, instead we drive out the accuser without first addressing it. Now, I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying why. Why are certain people, and I know right now this is going to draw the ire of people who would instead decide to go on a campaign against someone like myself asking the why. So anyway, back to the big picture here. We're talking today about sex trafficking.
Like in my case, Dr. Duke, my sister said to me, you look for it. Me tired one you. Not go out, your foot too hot. Where I was doing there.
Yeah, I think
I went to Shaw Park.
A lot when young people. So again, right, just because teenagers are out there exploring the world, it doesn't mean that they're now supposed to be victimized. A young woman being 16, 17, going out to a party doesn't mean if she's raped, that's why she got raped. She shouldn't have been at a party. She shouldn't have been raped, right? Again, it's where do we put the responsibility? And culturally, we're really messed up. We're really messed up. Our mindset is messed up. And a lot of it, again, has to go back to decolonization and deracialization, wherein there's so much we have to talk about when it comes to all of that. And of course, we can't accomplish that in 1 2-hour show here, which is where this is headed now. But let's not lose track of the whole conversation. We're back to human sex trafficking. And I wanted to show this. I pulled up Trinidad and Tobago because Live with Mama Coco, while it's broadcast in over 25 countries around the world at this point, it is also very much speaking to her home country, people there. And so, for example, there's a trafficking in persons report that's released by the State Department in the United States every year. And so they have Trinidad and Tobago in tier 2. They have different tiers. I don't know if Attorney Juanita is willing to talk about the tiers for sex trafficking. Are you open to talking about that today or perhaps in the future? Attorney Juanita?
Next 2 weeks.
Yes.
In the future.
And so, you know, we'll talk about that. I think then, given the time constraints, I think let's leave people with actionable steps then. So let's talk more about how can people recognize sex trafficking, help victims of trafficking, and also raising awareness about trafficking. So I think the first step is just raising awareness so that the conversation doesn't become always a bad girl who disappear. You know, the truth is every story that comes up in Trinidad and Tobago about a young woman who's gone missing, more than half the comments are, oh, she just ran away with a man, you know, not realizing that even if she picked up a bag and walked out of her parents' home or picked up a bag and went from school to someone else's home, it doesn't mean she wasn't groomed into leaving. And that's the part of the conversation that's always missed. And then we express despair when we see that the person's dead, etc. Because now all of a sudden the persons responsible for taking her are bad. They were bad even if they don't kill her, right? Just because, you know, oh, he's in love. No, he's not in love. We have patterns. And actually we see patterns. And having watched it now for the last 40 years almost, what I feel like I've seen also is we all know the people also who were actually predators of young women, right? So some of them are now way older, but they still keep targeting young women of a certain age. And all we do is we laugh at them, not realizing that there's a predatory behavior. If after a certain age, he can no longer see beauty in a woman or sexual attraction in a woman, and always has to go back to that age group, no matter how much older he got. And that's the sort of predatory stuff we haven't seen. Instead, what we tell his wife, you say, oh, you're old, you're granny, you're this, that's why you can't keep a man. But the truth is, it's not her that's aged and has a problem. It's that her partner still has eyes with a certain age group, which is a bigger issue.
Mentality.
And so there's so many layers here that we don't talk about it. Because even in the church, right, we watch some of our church leaders or religious leaders discard spouses. They just cycle through them because they keep needing a certain age group on their side. So we have to talk about all that. But anyway, I'm done speaking.